Jules Verne's journey through the impossible, translations in time. This is my impossible journey to determine why Jules Verne is so popular, why so much of his work is translated and translated in so many ways. How did he do it? Write all those novels. Why do you care? We live 150 years later. Yet Verne is still with us today, translated more often than Shakespeare. And we care in more ways than he could embrace. He produced short stories, plays, and books. But now we have him in films, maybe 200 of them, I think. Comic books, lots of those. Audio books, right there in the corner of our table, Tad Davis. Podcasts, standing in front of you now. And AI. Did I say that word? Perhaps we should make that issue quite clear. No AI, just my eye. Now, I'm going to disappoint my friend Steve here in just a moment, but it's a good setup, right? No AI, just my eye. We always have to play to the camera, do we not?
Yes.
So, but aren't all these things, the films, comic books, audiobooks, podcasts, and AI, they're just translations, and not just into another foreign language. And I think that's the key. We spend so much of our wonderful expertise trying to get what Jules Verne was saying right, and I think that's the wrong word. It's not right, it's accurate, right? While everybody else is running off and taking those concepts and making something new with them. So my hypothesis is that that's okay, even though there's a lot of change in the process. We'll come around to that in just a moment. So we are experiencing Jules Verne in more ways than just reading. And when we hear a translator's spoken version, aren't we hearing more than what Jules Verne may have originally intended? Can our spoken words speak, Tad, for a dead author? Jules Verne certainly could communicate when his words were thrown forward. He learned his craft on the stage and was writing words of which he was speaking, if only in his thinking. Can we really hear what he was feeling? Was it through the spoken word that he was writing his novels? Let me say that again. Was it through the spoken word that he was writing his novels? Is that why they were later a success on the stage? Writing feeling in words that he was hearing, like songs he was singing. Verne being one with great musical interests. And were his chapters lined out, stage blocked in theater scenes? Was it just that his imagination was so much bigger? Bigger than a building, larger than an iceberg, wider than an ocean, taller than an airy empire? And aren't the steppes of Siberia flat like a stage? Isn't the interior of a space capsule like a room with blocking? Were his novels just broad stages that he visualized in his own spacious mind's theater? If you think of Verne that way, you will see him differently. Verne wrote in French. He was not proficient in English. That is also part of my message. To understand the visual art of Jules Verne, you need a talented English translator. That's not a new problem. Biblical studies are full of such thought processes. And remember that French is close to its Latin origin. English is something different, a cacophony of mingled peoples, languages cobbled together. Now, Stephen, this is for you. Powerful writing is replete with rhetorical mechanisms. Now, they were first enunciated, and I mean enunciated, by the Greeks, because the Greeks weren't interested in writing, they were interested in speaking. And so they were the first to develop these rhetorical mechanisms. You know, rhythm, assonance, rhyme. Assonance is the rhyming of internal vowels. The Greeks were the first to tabulate and teach them, at least in the Western tradition. Even if they were speaking in a language very strange sounding and much earlier than Latin, but their concepts were quite understandable, and some of them are utilized in this humble offering. Jules Verne wrote in French, a beautiful sounding language full of many odd intonations. All of these, of course, worked into what Verne was thinking, feeling, writing, and probably speaking as his pencil was moving. And remember, he wrote first in pencil, and then would go over that again with pen. I believe he was listening. I believe he was listening to ensure that all of the Greek tricks in presentation were working as intended. I certainly hear my words when I'm writing. I can hear assonance coming down the track, and I will write to assonance. Jules Verne was singing. Shakespeare was singing. And once you start picking up on some of the mechanisms he's using to link his cars together, you can sing with them. That's the advantage to acting Shakespeare. It takes a long time to understand Shakespeare because it's kind of alien. But if you can memorize it and start acting it after a while, pretty soon you get into that rhythm and you say, I'm singing. It's kind of groovy. I think Jules Verne was doing the same thing. But can we really capture Verne's emotional intonations? Emotional intonations. Now, think about that in a translation. Emotional intonations and meaning when he translated into English. Well, Richard Wilbur did it, a great American poet, when he translated Molière's masterpiece for the stage Tartuffe. But how much of its attraction to English speakers is through the genius of his own expression? So, interestingly enough, Paris in the 20th century was rediscovered and republished and translated, and David Cook and William Butcher were not very happy with that translation. And in their comments that they published on the first two chapters, they make some statements which I think are helpful to understand the difficulty in translating. So here's what they said. We believe that the authorized version by Richard Howard is insufficiently faithful to Verne's, get this, Verne's intentions. Ooh, well, that's very nice. How can you translate intentions? They go on to say, while Howard's text is generally fluent and readable, it sometimes unaccountably takes upon itself to alter phrases from their original meaning. We suspect many of the inaccuracies are due to over-intrusive editing, the translator's haste, although a few demonstrate that the French has simply not been understood. Now think of this, and my French-speaking friends will check me on my statements. Je ne comprends pas un petit peu français. Yeah, that's the best I can do.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. I have said it many times. Think of this. The French alphabet has the same number of letters as the English version. All right, that's good. But an inspection of that similarity betrays some bewildering differences in usages. First off, don't expect the use of a W or a K in native French language. They are usually found on imported or adopted word meanings. Punctuation is generally the same. Okay, that's good, right? But the sound of 17 vowels varies greatly. And that is greatly important because vowel sounds are just that. They're ways of getting from one consonant to another consonant because consonants make words. The original alphabet, the Canaanite alphabet, had no vowels. The Phoenician alphabet had no vowels. It ended over in Greece, and the Greeks said, we are fluent speakers. We need to create something to get us from one consonant to another. And when they did that, when they put those vowels in, they could speak much more fluently, and more importantly, they could intonate emotion. It's in the vowels. The words are in the consonants. The emotion is in the vowels. The successful rhyming depends on how a word sounds when speaking. Now think about that. Successful rhyming requires you to hear what's being written. That's quite a job for a translator then. Quite a job. And when we read, aren't we unconsciously listening? So here's the task for the translator. They must determine if the sound is as important as its meaning. The sound as important as its meaning. And many ending consonants in French are silent, even though in French it is the last syllable that is most emphasized. In English scientific terminology, it's the second syllable that is emphasized. There are even 4 French nasal vowels that are very foreign to our hearing. I can't say them, so I can only tell you about them. So if Jules Verne was singing in his writing, a literal translation may not be very captivating. May not be very captivating. Now, English speakers are not versed in King's English unless you're an actor and you're trained in that. So we often speak in relaxed, almost slovenly movements. Many lovely American dialects have developed from such novel rhythms. Not so in France. French speakers have something to say, so they enunciate each syllable. As such, there are a lot more notes of harmony available for Verne to hang his rhetoric upon. Sounding syllables as singing. Sounding syllables as singing. Even if we ignore the 3 French accent symbols, which I can at least describe, acute, grave, and circumflex. I suspect that's grave, though. It's a. Therefore, if you read Jules Verne in English, it's necessary to start reading the most complete, faithful, and talented translations, which is why we're here, in order to understand Verne's content. The North American Jules Verne Society, president right here, has published many such works in its Palix series, a stunningly valuable set of documents, not only for the translations, but for the notes by our organizational scholars in describing what it took to translate it, what words mean, and what the history is. I do as much research in the Palix series notes as I do in other sources. Now, on its website, NAJVS also heralds other accomplished translations over the last half century, and Tad Davis, just recently in the Jules Verne Digital Forum, listed many of them. Thank you very much. Printed that off. So we're now fortunate to know what Jules Verne was actually saying in both content and context, because we have good, accurate renditions now. And I think, however, that it will take a lifetime of French studies to catch up with all of his emotional meanings. His emotional meanings. His widely popular series of novels, Extraordinary Voyages, was directed by Pierre-Jules Hetzel. Yet one of his earliest submissions to Hetzel was rejected. Paris in the 20th century. Yes. Too out there, too controversial, too useless to the broader interests of Hetzel's family-based readers. It would be lost and rediscovered in 1989 and first published in 1994. As with his 1882 morality play, he wrote a morality play. Our great adventuring, traveling novelist wrote a morality play. That's jumping back 2 epochs of French theater history. Journey Through the Impossible. But if you take Journey Through the Impossible and you take Paris in the 20th century, you get a good measure of his original thinking. Now, Verne was an emotional explorer, a magnet for information, a traveler in the vast world of geographic ambitions. So he tempered his theater aspirations and his Poe-like inclinations. And that should tell us something about Jules Verne. That he went gaga over Poe. And the Poe he was reading was a translation. Yes. And he began his own writings, based not on history, like his mentor Dumas, not on history. They were based on his childhood dreams of travels and adventure on ships he could see from Nantes, writing not what he had learned, but what he felt. For me, storytelling was Jules Verne's greatest genius. We simply just can't put him down. And he wrote novels which were first serialized in magazines, which is good training to keep readers hooked and focused. I think, and so here's my hypothesis. I think that Jules Verne is a modern incarnation of those ancient poets who brought forward oral traditions. He was a storyteller. Stories that taught and entertained. That's what the oral traditions were for, to pass on knowledge and to make sure you listen to tell good stories. But like each ancient storyteller who changed his message to fit the audience, Verne's work is now often translated for new ones, right? And adapting new forms of media. So here's my hypothesis. It is not his science that is so compelling. It is not his science fiction. It is not Verne looking into the future. It is the excitement of exploration in a world yet determined. It's not about love affairs. It's not about relationships. It's about the timeless stories of adventure, man versus nature. That is why he is so often translated into so many languages. We want our youth back. We want to go flying or riding, sailing or sinking, or shot from a cannon towards unknown dangers. So what's the problem with all these translations? And I mean here, not just those made into foreign language. I mean sketches, illustrations, comics, animations, movies, audio, radio plays, stage plays, social media, memes, and now AI reconstructions. Well, first it's the quality of the factual content and delivery. And therein lies the issue of Verne's tarnished early reputation. For such a prolific writer, there are too many words to be converted to English to satisfy immediate audiences and interests. And the desire to entertain newly targeted foreign audiences often resulted in a shorter, even altered rendition. And the reason for that usually came because they were translating for an audience of children. And I think that's important to think. As we criticize all these earliest English translations, and they're certainly worthy of criticism from Verne's point of view, if they were writing for an English audience of younger people, of course they're going to change them. Did they do it sloppily, or did they do it well? Andrew can tell us. Now, words carry a unique meaning. They're colored with emotion through an author's thinking. If the words are well written, they sing with rhythm, they tantalize the reader with rhetoric dancing. Rarely does a translator develop such a specific or similar ability as the unique author, Jules Verne. Now, one of my collaborators is a psychiatrist, Dr. Stephen Taylor, And Dr. Taylor is studying to be a psychoanalyst. So he's 6 or 7 years into his studies. Part of becoming certified as a psychoanalyst, you must be psychoanalyzed yourself. Now that's kind of freaky. And when I talk to him about what it's like and what happens, I don't get much information back. He did say this to me, and I thought I would pass it on to you because I think it's salient to my presentation. You are not just hearing words. The words are creating the experience. They are more than just descriptive. The words create the experience. The psychoanalytic experience is trying to make the experiential room created by words bigger. Now, in there somewhere is a translator. In there somewhere is a translator. You can also look at some fascinating books recently out in the Times Book Review. Quote, words possess multiple meanings as associations. They contain mysterious allusions and reference to other work unnamed but apparently recognizable. Literature is replete with slippery language. It is kind of speaking in code. Well, now, if that's what Jules Verne was doing, and he was certainly speaking in more than one level, you've got quite a task if you're going to translate that experience. I love you. A wonderful American phrase. It's very cacophonous. I love you. I love you, dear. Yeah. It would be better if I said, je t'aime. Now that says something. And it says more than I love you. And it says it differently. And it flows better. But it means the same thing to a translator. So there is an example. And then I have one more from the New York Times Book Reviews. And this one's really surprised me. If This Be Magic, The Unlikely Art of Shakespeare in Translation by Daniel Hahn. Translating Shakespeare. And remember, Verne caught the Shakespeare fever. It was translated right in the early 60s. And it really took Paris by storm. It was, hey, this is something different. It was almost like Ibsen and Chekhov coming into the stage thing. Wait a minute. These people are talking about important human events, and this guy's doing it with some kind of weird rhythm. Verne certainly would have picked up on this. Well, this book says the following. Shakespeare can be appreciated in all of his qualities, even if we don't hear a single one of his words. That's the exact opposite of what I'm saying. This fellow is a lot smarter than I am and certainly have done a lot more research. So there are alternate views of all of this. Wordplay, punctuation, word order, sounds, rhythm can all be accounted for. Ooh, you got to have some genius to do that. Yes, Boris Pasternak translated Romeo and Juliet, but he completely substituted his own poetic sensibilities for Shakespeare's rhythm. So there are different ways of doing all this. Now, rarely does a translator develop a specific or even similar ability of the unique author Jules Verne. Bill Butcher may be the best. What would you think? You quote him a lot. Bill Butcher, what do you think of his work? I do. Yeah, we've had a number of translators in the Palek series. Who do you think are really accomplished translators of Verne's work that into English? I mean, anybody? Who else? I mean, Miller did stuff, right? Who else comes to mind as being at the top of the list?
Rick Walter.
Rick Walter, yeah.
Depends on the purpose and style. I mean, Rick Walter's style is very different than
Yeah, Butcher can go very literal, and that's what he describes when he talks about his work.
At the same time, I was shocked to see this in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. When Commander Farragut says he's going to he'll blow up his ship if he has to in order to catch the sea monster. Aronnax in William Butcher's translation says, "Good on you."
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just a wonderful essay or investigation of translations. To find someone who's not hampered by cultural concepts that just don't translate over. They just don't translate over. Now think of this. Think of the mischief created by translators of great religious writings. They have trouble even translating from English to English. So it's not unique to our friend Jules Verne. There is, however, a great movement of scholarship in our organization to examine these. We get accurate retranslations with explanatory notations, word meanings, and history. Yes. People keep coming back to Verne because it's a reflection of his superb storytelling. That's my message. It's not the rhetorical mechanisms. It's not even the singing, although you can catch some of that if you have a good translator. It's just the superb storytelling. Storylines now accurately available through work of those like our organization and the Palix series. Now, some of these works in the Palix series are stage plays. And I think that's a place to begin to understand Jules Verne's success as a writer, because he wanted originally to be a playwright, and he wrote about 40 plays. Was he very good at it? Well, looking back, using our modern techniques, it doesn't seem so. Journey Through the Impossible is kind of slow and hangs its hat on Dennery's spectaculars of the different plays. Verne had something to say. You can see what he wants to say, and in fact, if you want to adapt and pull it out into a shorter play, you can highlight what Verne wants to say. But I don't think that's where he was real successful. But wait a minute, Dennis says. No, Dennis, why are you interrupting? Yes, it's true. It's true he made big bucks when he went back to the stage with some of his bigger novels. Around the World in 80 Days, Michael Strogoff. He made humongous money for him because he didn't make all that much money with Hetzel. But when he went back to the stage, even though he was splitting 50% with Dennery often, and then another, his 50% had to be split with a co-author on some of these plays, and just making 25%, he just thought he was, clean and green and in tall timber there, and was, hey, I am going to commission a boat, I want a captain and 10 sailors, right? And that was the Michael III, right? Off he goes. 9 years later, he's broke, he's got to sell the boat. Right? And that was just about when he wrote Journey Through the Impossible, put it on the stage with Dennery again. Can't fail. It can't fail. You got 3 of his novels, big old scenes. It's a big spectacular. It ran for a year or so and it was forgotten. Not only forgotten, but lost. And from that point on, he was broke. From that point on, he was broke. I was just in Paris, and I went to the Théâtre de la Porte Saint-Martin, still there, where that show was put on. And I walked right in, introduced myself as a member of the North American Jules Verne Society, and asked if I could go up and look at the theater itself. And they said no. They said no. But they were excited to see me, and I said, well, I'm going to walk up and down the steps because I know Jules Verne is going to cross my path. And so I did. Now, I work with an experienced playwright, Dr. Jack Wan. We have written 10 plays together, including musicals. We have now focused on staged radio dramas. Staged radio dramas. Yeah, thank you, in a podcast format. And what we're trying to do is something fun, something different, to use our skills and to continue my education, because he's already at the point where he's an accomplished playwright. But we do them in a podcast format. We combine social media, music, the stage, and audio, and we combine them all together. Now we have been looking at Jules Verne. Now, by the way, I was in Paris, as I just said, a couple of months ago, and I would ask people, how do you pronounce Jules Verne? Yeah. So yeah, I got two versions of it, right? And remember, it's just dropping these in vowels, in consonants. So one was Jules Verne. Jules Verne was a big one. And another one was Jules Verne. Jules Verne. So how do you pronounce it, Max?
Jules
Jules.
Verne.
Yeah, so you got the second one, exactly. And so I'm still working on it. Jules Verne. Is that right? Jules, yeah. I was not successful.
It seems to be hard.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. All right. So, the first effort that we undertook was Journey Through the Impossible. And I got together with Jack, and I said, Jack, what can we do to kind of make this into this new podcast format we have? And we produced three of these radio dramas, usually 5 episodes, based upon my fiction writings, speculative fiction writing. And now we're going to do 3 Jules Verne.
It's better, actually.
Thank you. I am trainable. And so we worked on that. And I wanted to, well, what I did is, as I said, these meetings are very stimulating because I know I'm going to be with scholars and I can really move forward in my own journey. So we hustled up and have a draft of our Journey Through the Impossible. Looks like that. This has to be given back to me because it's only a draft that I printed up in order to talk about it because I'm excited about it. But I need to take it back because it's not complete. But you can see what we're going to do here.
So you're not going to try and figure out how to stage the ballets
No.
that we saw at the.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Dennis and I were at the Cortez High School, and boy, were they ambitious to put that on, and they did a really fine.
They did.
They did a fine job. But no, for the mechanism that I have, and I have a card if you're interested. 2 of them are already on my blog site for free, so you could go in, hit my blog site, go to the free audiobooks, and it will say Cosmos the Stellar Stalker. You click on that, and you'll hear what the treatment will be for this one. Yes. So, is what we're doing an enhancement? No. Is it a different interpretation? No. Is it a return to stage where the actors use the spoken word to convey what Verne was actually feeling? Yes. First speaking to himself and now to you? I hope so. So it was an exciting opportunity for us. Now here's what we do. We cast the actors. I commission original music. We head to the Dynamics Productions audio studio in Lexington, Kentucky, and we recorded in sound booths. 5 episodes, and they can be heard on my blog site. Just give Cosmos a site. Now here's the curious part about this. For the father of science fiction, I don't think so, but he didn't think so. But for the futuristic inclinations that he had, you wouldn't think that he was so religiously oriented. But he came from a conservative Catholic family in a conservative part of the country, not. So he was periodically returning to those religious roots. This play, Journey Through the Impossible, is important because it really shows that. It is a battle between good and evil. Think about C.S. Lewis, but 100 years earlier. It's really Paralandra and Out of This Silent Planet. Good. And he brings in Ox, Dr. Ox. How fabulous is that? It's really a great technique. He brings in Ox to be the bad guy. And then he takes 3 of his major characters, Otto Leidenbrock, Michael Arden, and Captain Nemo, and he masquerades as those characters to be the guardian angel as he goes through the play. So it was a real effort to try to take the description that Verne used and make it into action. So rather than describe it in words as we might, Stephen in his books, we might do it, have the characters move the action forward through what they do and what they say. And that's what we worked on here. He called it an operetta, by the way. He called it an operetta. He was hoping for big-time success. He had just earlier, in 1876, this was 1882, in 1876 he put Michael Strogoff on the stage. Now listen to this. It ran for 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours, 16 tableaux, all kinds of sets, a gypsy ballet, a tartar ballet, 400 extras, 800 costumes, 138 dancers, and a troupe of 30 men with swords on horseback. All right? It ran in Paris for 2,502 shows until 1939. So if you think about it, his Michael Strogoff must have been like Les Mis. It must have been to what Les Mis to us, it must have been to them. And of course, you've seen the book. It's a huge book. Dr. Juan and I have already jumped in with our next Jules Verne radio drama in 5 episodes. Well, that brings me almost to the end of my presentation, and I thank you for your patience. Here's the genius of Jules Verne. This is my hypothesis, the genius of Jules Verne. It's the elements of exploration that are timeless. They're made into comic books, they're made into movies because of the thrill of exploration and travel to unknown areas of which there is great risk. Curiosity is a part of our nature regardless of what Jules Verne says of Dr. Ox in Journey Through the Impossible. And if you add adventure to explorations, you've got a story. Adventure to explorations, you have a story. And it's the storylines that are so often translated. The storylines. The better stuff, the gooder stuff, the more interesting stuff is in the accurate translation of what Verne was feeling as he did so. But as I've said, it's quite difficult. So, Derek, if you join me for just a moment. As I indicated to you, I have a saying right here. No AI, just my eye. And notice it has a trademark on it. Because if you write books, you better learn how to sell books. So I have sent this to the patent office, and I have applied for a registered trademark on this phrase. Do not use it, Stephen. No AI, just my eye. But here is the reality. At my age, I'm older than you and you. I'll give you a run for your money, I think. I've written many books. I have lots of plot lines. I've got a couple of different series. I got a lot of ideas in my head. I don't need AI to give me some creative idea. That's good. I'm also so old, I don't got that much more time to write, so I don't need AI to take me off 20, 30 years into the future. I do want to use AI because I want to compete with the big publishing houses. Because I'm just as good as their authors. Stephen's just as good as their authors. But we're not going to get the respect because we don't have the marketing backing behind us. Therefore, when it comes to AI, I market the hell out of it. And I would like to give you an example as we close this presentation with some slides. So I commissioned original artwork, and that's why I'm so interested in the sketches, because you'll find this of interest. So I commissioned this art. This is remember, the Journey Through the Impossible. We're going to get to here. We're going to end up here. Journey Through the Impossible. I get black and white sketches. That's the first one. That's Nemo. Otto Leidenbach. Michael Arden. Okay, I then go to a colorist, and it's kind of surprising to me. It's a throwback to old comic book production that you had sketch artists, and they would go to a colorist. And I had 4 of these, one of which I'm not showing you. It took my colorist 16 hours to color these on the computer because of all the different shades. So if we go to the next slide, there's Nemo colorized. Now you would look at this and say, well, my child could have done that. Yeah, you try. You try. So there's Nemo, right? And can Al see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you see this, Alex?
Yep, all good. Thanks.
Yeah, so here's, look how nice that colored up, right?
Yeah.
That's Otto Lidenbrock. Okay, one more. And there's Michael Arden. Okay, so then I go to my graphic designer, and I say to my graphic designer, okay, now put them all together. How about that? Yeah, so that's the artwork goes into the cover. All right? I said, okay, now it's time to get in with the big boys. So I've got an animator, an AI animator. And I send this to the animator and I say, animate this. Now, if I'm at a table and I'm selling my books to someone who's interested in one of these, and I take my iPad and I show them this, 50% of the time they're mine, right? But I can do even better than that. Let's look at the next one. Oh, we need sound for that.
The wind is steady, the path is treacherous. Steady.
Now, if you sell books, this is killer stuff. This is just killer stuff. Now, and that it's true to my no AI, just my eye. All done originally. I was so worried when I saw the prototype that I published. I said, people are going to look at this and they're going to say it's AI because I think it's that good, right? So I made sure, and I'll do this from now on, that in the inside first cover of the book, I list the original sketch artist, I list the colorist, I list one other artist who has a picture in there, and then of course on the bottom, no AI, just my eye with the trademark so that you don't steal it. All right, and so we now have, I think, the final slide. Now, if that's not groovy, that's all I'm saying. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, Alex.